was telling her, I got paddled in that room over there. I got a front office there. In 7th grade.
You still remember
Real
that?
bad, yeah. I told her, hey, you know that room right there? I got sweat right there. And my aunt was one of the witnesses.
She didn't rescue you?
No, she said, well,
Okay, I'd like to call it to order the Planning and Zoning Commission. I'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Invocation. Dear Lord, please look over the town of Superior and all of its residents. Take care of all the civil servants and keep the good projects going and continuing in Superior. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, roll call. Henry Munoz.
here.
Terry Fedor. David Gunn.
Here.
Jesse Garcia.
Here.
Joy Evelyn.
Here.
And Matt Mashaw are here. And Gutierrez is absent.
He does indicate he's on the way.
Okay. Okay, new business, work session to discuss other solutions on RV parking.
I tried contacting the town of Sedona and the town of Sierra Vista to see what they do. No response. They did not get back to me.
Right,
What's that?
nothing,
Yeah.
no comment.
Todd, have we contacted any other communities around the area to see how they're dealing with their RV parking and what they're doing?
I've looked at 5 or 6 of them and tried to figure out what their plans are, and I know county had an attempt and never got it completed as far as I can tell. Nobody has a better approach than we've got from anybody I surveyed when I was putting together the original draft. Like I said, that last draft was our best idea. I don't have anything else productive that came out of my studies.
Todd, I have a question. Would the city have any ambitions to put aside a strip of land and designate it as a RV parking or storage for vehicles that, can't be at the houses? Have you thought about that?
I have no problem with that, other than the fact we don't have any such things, so
There's no land available?
we'd have to buy it, and then we're getting into private sector business. We're buying a building to establish a property to establish a business. Hopefully somebody in the private sector will see a niche and establish a business for storage or RVs.
I just thought about that, because it would probably be a form of revenue for the city, to have a parking area where it's designated where the people could possibly, pay monthly, and it'd be revenue for the city. If you have a strip of land that we can code it, maybe code it, for that reason.
As a general rule, I've been told that towns are supposed to avoid being real estate companies. I don't know if that's based in law or if that's just what people tell you. I'm not opposed to it, but it would take a lot of research.
Up there on the highway, just before you get to the stoplight by Barnett and Delaney, there's a big piece of land there, and they've got a bunch of RVs in there. Kurt Williams owns that.
Where are we talking?
Right on
Globe.
Highway 60 in Globe.
Oh,
And I think I counted like either 8 or 9 RVs parked in there. I don't know how many spots he really has. But they have it all hooked up where you can, hook up to septic. He rents them out for $250 a spot, and you're responsible for your utilities.
the challenge for that, and without divulging too much, there are people who are attempting to do this, to put an RV park in our town. It requires a sewer tap and an engineered set of plans, and it needs to address your utilities, your power, your water, your sewer, needs to address ingress and egress for fire trucks and everything else. So it usually takes $20,000 to $30,000 to do a plan, to do an RV park. And thus far, nobody's willing to spend that much money.
That's before you even start work on them.
Yes, that's just planning. That's engineers and mess.
We're not talking about an actual RV park, we're talking about storage.
And
Where-
storage it's an easier thing to do.
You still
And
need security and you still need access. for
usually you have to have a
fire trucks.
6-foot wall around it, a block wall or obscurative wall, and there's another $40,000 to $50,000 to put a wall around a big enough lot to be useful. So it's not that these things aren't doable, they're just expensive, which is why nobody's done it yet.
Yeah, that one has it's like somebody gouged a big piece out of the hill, so he doesn't really have to put a wall there.
And maybe Globe zoning code doesn't require that, ours
Yeah,
does.
that could be.
Todd, have you contacted or looked at the cost of lots, basically storage space, what it would cost for, say, a typical 24-footer or 18-foot RV to get an idea of what a monthly cost is?
No.
What I've found, it's average about $60 a month for uncovered parking. I mean, covered is $150 up.
Now that's storage.
Storage, that's all we're talking about, storage.
Just parking.
I do know that a lot of RV parks charge you $40 a day, so it's pretty, the day charge is pretty high.
Did the ordinance change make it through council?
Not yet, there was not a quorum last week, so it's not yet passed. It will this council meeting.
So it sounds like what we need is an individual investor to bring some capital and that'll be his investment. And he can make if we can find some individual investor or somebody that has the impetus and the capital, he can have a good stream of income coming in for himself.
The problem's still going to be finding a big enough lot. Most of
Yeah.
the big lots in towns are tied up by BHP or by Dr. Wilt. There aren't a lot of available lots to purchase that are large enough size to be useful.
What about annexation of land?
We can annex lots of land, but there's no private land around us. There's nothing. So we can annex, but it doesn't give us any extra value.
What's around us, just forest land?
There's forest to the north is entirely Resolution. To the south is almost entirely Imerus. And there are a few small ranches. There's half a dozen property owners, they're all small lots. Until you get out to the Arboretum, and then there's the 6 or 7 lots across from the Arboretum.
And the red is surrounded by forest land, right?
Yes. So we are looking at annexation. We should be bringing an annexation plan to this committee within the next 2 or 3 months. We're trying to work out all the details first. But it's there's not, even if you annex forestry, it doesn't give you any extra authority or power over that land. It's just forestry land within your limits. So you need, when you're annexing, they say it's not even the best idea to annex private or residential property. You want to annex commercial.
Commercial.
Because if you look at Globe, they went all the way around Claypool and they annexed the Walmart and the hospital. They completely skipped all the residential properties because there's no value in residential. So there's no revenue stream, so why would they annex them? So it's a challenge. Our annexation is most likely going to be a net loser, at least initially, but hopefully in the future, more people will move out there and become more profitable.
Todd, City of Apache Junction has acquired land, whether state or federal, for the purpose of the city in itself to develop economic development. Can we look into that, possibly getting state land or federal land?
Generally, the way the law is written now, you can't just get land, you have to do a land exchange, which means you have to buy the land of equal value, or what you generally do, you buy environmentally sensitive lands and exchange it. So you have to have an equal value of appraised land to give them, to get that land. So the law has changed, they no longer give a property to anybody, it's considered an earmark. So that's why the town has the ability to buy right outside of town 526 acres as part of the land exchange from the federal government. It would have to require a federal appraisal. That appraisal would most likely judge that land between $10,000 and $12,000 per acre. So we would need a minimum of $5 million to purchase that property. We just don't have it. And we're not going to get it in the near future. So it's going to take creative financing in order to even consider purchasing those properties. So, and 250 of it is the airport. So yes, there's ability for the town to get money from the federal government, or get land from the federal government, but it does require cash. And we don't have that.
When did this change? Because I know Apache Junction acquired a good chunk of land for economic development.
I've spoken to the federal government. They tell me the only way to get is land exchange. And that's, you know, I can check and see what Apache
Can
Junction
you
found out.
check with the state also?
Yeah, because it might be state land, it may not be fed land.
Yeah, it might be state land too, but I know that they did acquire property for economic development.
Yeah, everything around Apache Junction is either the wilderness to the north, to the superstitions, or state land. Everything between us and Florence, between Florence Junction and Apache Junction is entirely state land. So we don't have any state land in our vicinity, it's all forestry. So it all deals with the Fed. And we're back to land exchange. And it has to be a legislation passed by Congress in order to get the property exchanged.
Does that old swimming pool belong to the city?
Yes, it's 2.5 acres, it's surrounded by 22 or 20-something acres of Dr. Wood's property. He owns all the way around it.
Sort of one is.
Going back to something even more basic, has there ever been a legitimate survey, or could we do one? And, you know, you drive through town and it looks as if we're awash in these things, but how many there actually are in town? And if there would be any interest in the owners, would they be happy to have a secure place to?
Generally, secure place is going to charge them. At home, it doesn't get charged. They're going to be mad no matter what we do.
Yeah, but some people might just want to get them out of their driveways too.
It's a theory, but most of the comments I've gotten have been they don't want to pay for it, they want to park it at their house.
And we have to be really cheap. Yeah, $60 a month is a lot for just sitting there.
It's up to the.
Yes, sir.
I just have a simple question.
Can you get up to the mic, please, and see?
It's good to identify yourself, tell us where you live too, please.
Hi, I'm Ken Tuttle, I live up in the Highlands. Sherry brought up a point about how many RVs are we talking about? Has anybody done a survey to know how many RVs there are in this town? I mean, you're looking at future development of maybe parks, RV parks, which I own a 40-footer, and I love traveling with it, but in parking it was a pain in the neck. But the only thing is when you take it out to a service that provides protection and storage, they really do charge to the nose for it, like you said, undercover or out in the open. Before we talk about RV parks and acquiring land, how many RVs are we talking about that really deserve this much attention at this point? And I know you're trying to plan for the future because that's what zoning is about. So has anybody ever done a
Well,
survey?
I can, it's not necessarily a survey, and I think when you talk about RVs, I think that's, you look at it more than a generic term. I think we narrowed it too far down, because we're not just talking about RVs, we're talking about trailers, we're talking about campers, we're talking about abandoned vehicles, boats. It's a plethora of stuff, so it's not just RVs, that people are actually parking in their front yards, abandoned vehicles, and I think we gotta probably change that type of discussion, because I think we narrowed it too, we're putting ourselves in a corner by just saying RVs, because it's really not about RVs. I don't have to do a survey, you just drive around town
Oh, I
slowly, and you can find out how many things are out there, and it's not just in the Highlands.
I can answer to a certain extent. It's not up-to-date information. About 8 or 9 years ago, when I was doing code enforcement, I did one sweep of town, and I had about 25. That includes people who are living in them, people who are storing them illegally, etc. At any one time, there are a lot more than RVs than that, but many of them, because these houses just look funny, it doesn't mean that the house is the RV's in violation. As long as you pass the front part, or front into the house, it's legal. So, there are a lot of storage where the house sits funny on the lot, but if you look at it from the front setback, it's fine. So, I think that if there is a certain amount of people with specs, it's not a huge number, it's in the dozens probably, but it's still going to be a code enforcement issue going forward, because when our code enforcement officer gets this new code set, he's going to go out, and he's going to attempt to enforce it. And it does have some flexibility, it has some ability to give people temporary permits and things like that, so it won't be as harsh, but it's still enforcing the existing code.
All right, I noticed, as you said, you're pigeonholing yourself because you're saying RV in this particular thing, and I thought this was strictly going to be oriented towards RV. The last meeting I attended, which was about a month ago, was the trailers and cars and everything, and I understand that from a perspective of the town looking at the area and trying to clean up the area. In the community that I live up in the Highlands, we have a 20-foot setback for the housing. It's a zoning setback. It would be unconscionable and unethical to enforce a parking 20-foot setback because we don't have any space to put anything else alongside the houses the way they're designed in. So you would have to do an area by area adjustment to what you want. In our particular area, more than a 5-foot setback. There's other ways to get at those cars that are parked there. Are they registered? Are they on flat tires? Are they insured? Are they being used or just stored? There's other ways to address those personal issues that you're going after. But each case is going to have to be looked at for each area in a different light. You can't enforce a 20-foot setback up in the Highlands because we have our houses starting 20 feet back. That's what the setback is for the road.
I live in the Highlands, and I wouldn't even think about buying an RV because I have no place to store it.
Well, no, I'm
So-
going back.
So that's what I'm saying, if I buy an RV, where am I gonna put it? Well, I'm not gonna do it because I don't wanna pay rental, it's not only for the RV, but we'll pay $120 a month to go store it somewhere outside.
Corrals.
Right.
Yeah, unless you have a corral.
And let me say real quick, I have to address the issue between abandoned vehicles or junk vehicles and RVs. They are very separate issues. The abandoned vehicles have a clear code for them. It's very enforceable. We can go after those, and we do on a periodic basis. The RVs are special because you can live in them, and they have a special set of requirements. They have to be tapped into sewer or power or water. So they're a much different conversation. Now, boats and trailers, they are generally covered under the vehicle storage policy. So it is something that the RVs, whether or not we want people to live in them, whether we want them to be able to store, in the Highlands, it's going to be difficult to store anything there. The best we could do is take it said from the front line of the house with the old code. We moved it up to front setback, which is 20 feet. The houses are set about 40 or 50 feet back from there, so you're not going to get 40 feet, 40-foot trailer. So it's a catch-22. Again, if I had a good solution for it, I would have implemented it already. I have no good solution for it. And do excuse me, I'm getting a call from Councilman.
All right, going back, you brought up RVs again, but I was going more towards your concern about cars, junk cars, and other things being stored, trailers, boats. People who have boats certainly don't want to take them off site because when they go to pick them up, they'll be bringing them back just to shell. I do have a trailer in my yard, and I can get, if I stretch it, I can get a 20-foot setback, but with great difficulty. And I don't think in the Highlands that you should try to put a 20-foot setback. The houses are not 40-foot setback. In the street that I live on, it's 20-foot setback. So if you have a trailer that's 18 feet long, you're not going to make it. You shouldn't even be parking your car out front if that was the case, because you can't meet that. My garage starts at 20 feet from the road. And unless you want people pulling up on the side yards, in the neighbor's yards, side yards, or in between houses, and that's going to look worse. You have to look at it through an individual, I think you have to really do an individual area survey as to what codes you're going to try to put in force to get the outcome you're looking to get.
Well, my understanding about codes and I don't know if I'm wrong, but you can't customize codes for specific areas. This has to be across the board, and I think the manager has told us that several times.
I think I did the last meeting I was here, I had contacted Globe and I spoke with a lady up there at Globe, and there's certain areas where they have specific parking for certain areas where cars can park or cannot park in certain streets. Just because of geography, like you were talking about, it doesn't allow it. So in some streets, you can park out on the street, and some streets you can't. It just depends on where you live at, it's sectioned off that way. That's up in the city of Globe, and Miami does that too, because I contacted Miami and Globe, and they both do it. Selective parking in certain areas, just because the street was designed back in the, say, 20s or the 30s, they were real narrow. People built their buildings and there was no way to get enough cars in there.
You usually could park on one side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. It was
In
selective
those
parking.
areas.
Yeah.
But he's not talking about you're talking about parking on your lot, but you need more space.
Yeah, because the house is built
Some
out.
of the, go down some of the newer developments in the valley. I mean, you can hardly park a truck in the driveway, the garage doors there. I mean, so they have to put them in storage. So-
Yeah, but not everybody in Superior is gonna go put their cars in storage. You're looking to start, an unequitable fight with the township, and that's not gonna happen.
No, I disagree with that because, I've been here, I moved back about 14 years ago. And we know what we were dealing with before. I don't know if you were here 14 years ago.
No, it wasn't.
But it was a mess because there was no enforcement. And it went from bad to worse and from worse to even worse than that. Because there was no code enforcement. Because people have a tendency to just say, hey, well, because it's happening over here, I can do this. And it just got out of hand. So we spent, I'd say 14 years trying at least to get to this point. And we kind of see the trend changing, sliding back a little bit. Whether it's new or whether it's old RV, it doesn't really matter. But we're kind of sliding
The
back.
community that I came from originally on Long Island had the same problem. We had people that would store everything out front, and they instituted code enforcement, and that was a rough job for the people that did it. But they did do it, and they did bring the town up from where it was. It's not an easy task, and one shoe doesn't fit all people. You're not going to wave a magic wand and say, listen, this is the number, and this is what it's going to be for the whole town, because that's not going to happen. You have different situations, and you have to adopt to those.
Well, basically, that's what it's been in our community ever since I've been back. I mean, that's basically what it is, unless something changes. It's kind of been that way.
And I've been here all my life, I've never moved out, I lived here, I was on the council too. And when I was off the council, when I resigned, at one time I was cited for a vehicle I was restoring, okay? Todd was the code enforcement when he was the chief. I brought it to his attention that there was approximately 55 cars that belonged to family members of the council, and why weren't they being cited? I was getting cited, but these other people that had family ties to the city council or worked for the city weren't getting cited.
We've been through this Pandora's box, just like that you're
Yeah.
saying. It's a Pandora's box.
I just think that there's many different ways to go about what you're trying to accomplish without trying to get one cookie cutter system that fits everything.
Well, I think
You're not gonna get a cookie cutter system.
No, I
It's
think,
gotta be, it's pretty near,
It's for the
almost
common,
individual.
it's for the common good of all the community.
Oh,
And you start,
absolutely.
if you start
Absolutely.
specific
Because
cases.
if people start parking junk out front of the houses, what happens to the housing in that area? The devaluation of it.
Yes,
So you can't have that. We have, in the Highlands, we have a certain amount of that. But there is a way to go about getting rid of those because most of those cars don't have plates. The
Right.
tires are flat. They're not registered. There are other ways to accomplish your means to an end without saying, well, we're going to put a 20-foot setback and that's going to be it, the whole area. That's all I'm saying.
Still
Just check, you have to look at alternatives. You can't.
I think we're commingling issues that have nothing to do with one another. The abandoned vehicle code has nothing to do with the RV code we're talking about. They're totally separate issues. They're enforced with different sets of code, and commingling makes no sense, because we're talking a zoning issue, and and the abandoned vehicle is a town code issue. So they're totally separate code sets. So I would encourage us to get back on the original merchandised item, which is RVs.
The gentleman just brought up of being more selective in certain areas and customizing, and I think, I don't know if I said that whatever we do, it's gotta be uniform across the board.
There's something called selective enforcement. If you, as a code enforcement officer, go into court and say, over here it's allowed, over here it's not, the judge says selective enforcement, throws your case out. It has to be a same rule set for everybody. Doesn't mean different zoning tracts can have different rules for the different zoning rules, because those are generally allowed. So if you say in this zoning district, it's allowed. So if you say in all R15s, you can't park, but you can do it in commercials, that's where you can do it. You can't do it between different zoning tracts. You have to break off that zoning tract.
And again, you go back to RVs, and I understand that. I sold mine before I moved here, so I eliminated a lot of problems with that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Natalie Backey. I also live in the Highlands, and I'm a little concerned about what I'm hearing, that we're just going to make it just across the board, you can't do anything up there. You can't park it in the front. We don't have a lot of room. There is no extra storage. There is no gates to bring things in. There's a lot of vacant lots up there that maybe that's a suggestion to put a lot up there. Buy a lot. If we only have 25, you'd be amazed what you can park on a vacant lot. And according to what I've been told repeatedly, these lots are only $20,000, $30,000. Some of these lots up there, it wouldn't cost much to get a lot and lay cement down there and put a fence around there.
That's exactly what we're trying to avoid, right, what you just said. Because there's people that are building $200,000 to $300,000 homes up there. And they're not gonna want that in their neighborhood. But that's what we're trying to avoid, because it's just, we have so many vacant lots.
Then why, when I tried moving here 4 years ago, I was told there was absolutely no RV parking, and all I've seen around town is RV parking.
And
Right now, we have a storage shed that's been in front of somebody's house, or a storage unit
yeah,
in front of somebody's house now for 3 months.
and that's,
I think it's great what you're trying to do, especially up there, because there's a lot of people living in RVs up there also.
we're trying to mitigate that. That's what we're here, that's what we're having a work session.
So it hasn't passed.
No, this is just a work.
Just the work, no,
Suggestion.
there was some-
No, you have an ordinance already.
Right, but we're making it a little less strict, where if you need to store it there, you can buy a permit and everything.
Okay,
That has not yet been approved by the council, but it will be on the 11th.
Can you recap that? Were you here for the last meeting?
no, I wasn't.
Why don't you recap what that ordinance
In
is?
summary, it says, rather than having to park your RV past the front line of your house, you now you can park it either past the front line or within the front setback of your property.
That's perfect, thank you very,
What?
very much.
It's 180
Within
days.
the front setback or behind the
Was it
front
180
setback?
days?
You have to have, inside the setback, by that I mean, it has to be a residential area 20 feet from the curb. Now, if you look at in the Highlands, you have a drainage easement of 10 feet. So that's the front 10 feet. If you get 10 feet beyond that, you're acceptable to park. You don't have to be past the front line of your house.
Yeah. Wasn't there a limit on that as far as number of days?
No, that one is your permanent parking, change the parking, allows them to park within the front, as long as you're inside the front setback, they're allowed. They will.
I didn't realize that.
Okay, so in the areas where there's 5 to 10 feet setback,
There are no areas in the town zoning code that have 10-foot front setbacks.
well, the houses are 5 and 10 foot
Then it's
from
the front line of the
property
house.
line.
It's the front line of the house or the front setback, whichever number is lower. So if you are in a neighborhood that you're, in an old neighborhood and your house is on Canal, on the front line, in and past the edge of the road is acceptable, because it's the front line of your house. So that's the two numbers, the front setback or the front line of your house, whichever is lower,
Behind either one,
behind either one.
okay. And you have to, it has to be the occupant, the The owner has to be the occupant, correct?
Yes, but living in it is a different discussion.
Yeah.
You can live in it for 14 days with a permit, you just come to the front desk and you sign.
How long can you renew that permit?
180 days
Indefinitely?
with cause. If you come to this committee and you write a letter saying, I have to live in it for longer than 100 days because I have X, Y, Z happen, they can give you a 6-month permit to do that.
Okay, and then renew it again after 6 months?
It just says they can give you up to 180 days. It doesn't say that it's renewable.
Okay.
The reason we passed that was it gave some flexibility right now. And what we're talking about now is maybe taking a look at the overall verbiage to try to address some of the issues that
That's
I don't know that we'll be able to, you know.
right.
This all comes down to competing needs. You have property owners that that feel that RVs lower their property values and mess up the view of their property, and they don't want them. And then you have RV owners who want to be able to store them. So those are conflicting needs and conflicting wants. And so our code is an attempt to draw a balance between that. It's never going to make everybody happy. It's just impossible.
So, you know, I kind of look at it from a hypothetical, even in the Highlands. People just take their front yard out and just park 2 RVs, not even on the driveway. They'll park it right in the front yard on the dirt and not on the concrete.
Well, the neighbor
I-
down the street that has 15 cars in
Yep,
front of
yep.
it at all
But
times.
we can't talk about cars.
I know, but I'm just saying.
You're right, I think we're on that guy too.
And I would say for other code issues that are already addressed in code, for instance, junk vehicles in the front yard, if you put in a work order at the front desk, the code enforcement officer will review the case and likely write a note. So, but there's existing code for those issues.
Yeah, and I just bring up my point about discussion. We can create a monster here too. Yeah, we did this temporary thing and like we did in this code to have that passed yet. We're gonna get an influx of people. And then, you know what, they're not gonna have 1 RV, they're gonna have 2 or 3 RVs, because they're just gonna park 2 on the driveway, maybe 2 right on the yard, or maybe even 3, so now you have 5.
I don't know that that's allowed, I'd have to
For
double check
one
the
house?
code, I didn't think of that
Oh, yeah.
specific issue.
Even so.
But you have to remember as well that the code, if you're parking outside of the accepted code parking, the permanent parking code, you only can get a short-term exemption. And the reason that it doesn't repeat endlessly is because so it's not a permanent fix. If you have an RV in your neighborhood and you need a few months to figure out where you're gonna put it, you can get a permit to store it there while you're figuring it out. Eventually it's gotta go. And that's, if you look at the code sets, it says, you know, it's a temporary permit. It's not a permanent permit to store it there. So you have to still store it within the front setback, or behind the front setback, or behind the front of the house. If you can't do that, you can get a temporary permit until you do something else with it, but it's only temporary.
So is there a distinction between an RV and a travel trailer?
RVs,
Fifth wheel?
it's a recreational vehicle, a boat is a recreational vehicle.
Mhm.
Travel trailers are generally considered to be recreational vehicles because they're, and, you know, some utility trailers are considered, but some of the stuff is just covered in parking code and it's not covered in RV code. And no, there isn't something, as far as I know, specifically for utility trailers, but there is like a boat, that's an RV, it's a
Well,
recreational
maybe
vehicle.
sometime down the road, that we need to give the RV a definition of what that is, because then it's not up for interpretation.
I do believe it's in the
So,
code, I'd have to look.
yeah. But weren't we initially talking about recreational vehicles of various kinds, and I'm including boat trailers in that are used for a very small part of the year, or intermittent use? You're talking about RVs that are sitting there with people living in it, that's a whole different thing. I have no problem with people that are in them while they're working on their house, that just makes sense.
Yeah, and you can get a temporary permit for that, and that's one of the exemptions you can go,
That's fine.
you can go for much longer than 6 months, because it's for as long as you have the permit, you can,
Yeah.
to build your house.
Get burned down, if there's damage or whatever.
Yeah. But you have to have an active permit, and the county will not give you an endless permit, you have to be working on it.
The description in the ordinance talks about motorhomes, travel trailers, camping trailers, utility trailers, other trailers, or boats.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Maybe RVs and motorhomes would all have engines, it'd be self-propelled, trailers, you got anything you have to haul.
Well, I think from my concern is that I kind of see what's coming down the road, I think we all do. You know, we're gonna have an influx, we're gonna have a big impact, like some of these, like North Dakota and all those, and we're gonna be hammered. If we don't work out something that's amenable or something that works, yeah, I kind of look at it like this. We got responsible people in here that own, they're respectable, they own RV, they do the right thing. But this just says we have 10 of those, 10 people that have RVs, it doesn't matter what quality, brand new, 50 years old, 2 of them are responsible. The other 8 aren't. That's bad news for our community. So that's where we try to draw that balance in, because, yeah, I agree, yeah, hey, I appreciate you can have an RV, but, you know, and I'd like, you know, it'd be nice to park it there, but at the end of the day, we're dressing it for a very, it's the Highlands, because I live there, but it's a very segmented part,
Exactly.
you know, but then we got the rest of the community just going willy-nilly, you know? Oh,
Yeah, you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
You have to have it one way or the
Yeah,
other.
they may drag in a 30-foot boat and just park it there, and it's, you know, it's
Yeah,
salt.
the Highlands just wasn't designed for.
No, it wasn't
No.
designed for that.
Just
It was
wasn't.
never designed for that.
Neither were the old parts of
Well,
town.
when I bought my house there, I said, well, I'll never have an RV. When I bought the house, I go, I'm just gonna have to use my other friends' go bar their quads and,
Well, many of the islands lots were built with the idea of having RV gates as a possibility, but then they put all the air conditioners in front.
Yeah.
So there's no way to put one in. It would be air conditioned.
I can get to mine if I go across my mother-in-law's garden.
And he chops down two
I suggest you
trees.
not do that.
well, see, you say that,
Good for replacing for you.
you know, when you say that going across the garden, you know, in our neighborhood, you haven't seen it yet. You know, you think that people would just park, you know, parallel, make it nice square in. No, people were parking horizontal to their lot, inside their lot.
You should have seen it this summer across from my street. I mean, I had to finally call the police department
Yeah,
because it was just nuts.
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
Yeah,
My favorite things.
there's that place in one of the corner there, but that's not RV.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Let's get back to the
Let's get back to
RV.
RV.
Hank just has to park his yacht a little further.
Yeah. No, and I think,
Fixes
I think,
Well,
I really think there's compassion here.
Well, I do know, so even just on the other side of the highway, there's houses with the lots, the houses sit far back a lot, they have a small backyard, so they've got trailers sitting in their front yard, so it's like, that's sort of, I don't know how you'd explain,
There are some of these houses that are set on the back, one across the street from my house, set all the way back on the right, all the way to one end of the property, all the way against the back. Their front line of their house is about 20 feet back from the property line on one side of the street, on Stone. On the other side of the street, on Gibbs, there is nothing there, there's a side lot, he's got 2 RVs parked there. If those RVs are past the front line of his house, they're legal. And that's where I say that the interpretation that all of these RVs in town are suddenly illegal and we're gonna go out and ride a bunch of, it's not true. If you're stored appropriately, there's nothing, we're not gonna be going after anyone. It's just the people out in their front yard or who are trying to live in it.
Yeah, I looked at that, there's one on the corner of Gibbs and Stone. I mean, that is right on the corner.
Yeah,
Gibbs
he's too far forward.
It's way far forward.
If he moves it back 10 feet, he's
If he
fine.
goes 10 feet one way, it still looks the same,
Yeah.
but he's 10 feet back instead of being on the corner.
That one's not owned by the owner.
There you go. That RV is not owned by the owner, but it's parked there.
And the oddity about that is that gentleman has plenty of room on his lot to park.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's kind of but the code enforcement officer he doesn't go and immediately start writing tickets. He goes and he knocks on the door and say, hey, you're worried you got an issue here, can you fix it? And if they say, no, I'm not gonna, or he can't get a hold of somebody, then he writes him a letter and he says, can you please fix this? If they ignore his letter, he goes and knocks on the door and says, hey, can you fix this, please? And if they still ignore him, then he might start writing them tickets. We try to work with everybody, and what actually goes to court is very small. We end up taking maybe 5 code enforcement cases to court. So most of them that go to court are either dismissed, they actually have a ticket done, they fix it, and the judge dismisses it, and never goes to court. So, and my entire time as a code enforcement officer, I think I took 3 to court.
Yeah, and I think for me, I think it's a matter of awareness, even from people that buy homes. Buyer beware, you know, especially from even our real estate companies, they gotta make these buyers aware that it's lax, but not as lax as you think you'd like it to be. Because there are restrictions, and they're not, what do you call, homeowners associations, but there's code enforcement, there's code restrictions. And I think, we're gonna get an influx of people, hey, let's go to Superior because I can buy a lot in Highlands, put a pad and just stick something there. No, you can't.
That's good.
Yeah, that's
I
good.
love hearing that.
Yeah, because that's what's coming. We've seen this in these communities that have an impact from, North Dakota, South Dakota.
Charles Benedicto went from 25,000 to 90,000 in 3 years. They've got RVs everywhere they're trying to handle right now.
Well, look what's happening at Peralta.
Yep.
But if you look also at, Apache Junction 25 years ago, same thing. We
Yep.
were a small community of 25,000 people, and every winter, 100,000 people moved into town. And so it went to 125,000. There are RVs everywhere. So their code enforcement officers were running around chasing their tails, telling everybody, no, you can't just buy a vacant lot and put an RV on it. And what happened? There's RV parks everywhere. Somebody got wind of it, somebody bought a lot, somebody built an RV park, and now it's perfectly acceptable and everybody's happy. And somebody's making money, and the town gets property tax and sales tax, and it's good for everyone. That's what we need. I think there's a need for an RV park. Hopefully somebody will see that need, move in and buy a piece of property and build it. And it's just a matter of time.
They just opened up a small one in Globe. I don't know if you know where it's at over there. It was like a little piece of land on the edge of a cliff. And they put a wall around it, and now they must have 40 footers, 45 footers in there all the time, and they have all drive-throughs, but you wouldn't believe that they could put that many RVs on one piece of property.
I do believe they fought with Globe and Gila County on that for 3 years. And it cost them quite a bit of money to get the permits for it. We want to be more friendly than that. We don't want them to charge, but we still need to set a plan. And RV parks, they do have to be properly planned. There's a lot of people coming in and out of them. There's a lot of sewer that comes out of it. The power it plugs extension cords into the outlets, thing that needs to be properly designed, so you're not overloading circuits and things. All that needs to be designed. We can't just let somebody throw one up willy-nilly. And it's going to take a real investor with enough money to actually put some money into developing it appropriately, putting paving in, like the old one at where the Circle K used to be. I mean, that was properly put in, properly laid out. All the taps were done. Probably didn't cost them that much. It has to have a central place with with showers and bathrooms, and it's got to have washer dryer and an office. All that stuff costs money.
Todd, what happened to that property above by the Little League Park? There was a proposal for an RV park back in the day at one time.
Which one are we talking? We're talking about
The plateau, you know where the Little League Park is? Just
Dr. Will.
That's Will.
Dr. Will owns those 22 acres. There's no power, there's no utilities up there. I don't see why I think it's zoned higher density residential, but I'd have to look.
Zone 3, R3.
R3, so you could absolutely do high density residential up there. But he would probably have to buy the town's pool lot, because it has power, sewer, water, all there, and he surrounds it on all sides. Also, the 2 streets they're accessing are right there. So Gomez and Gray both get in there, even though Gray was never put in.
That'd be a nice place for an RV park though.
I think it'd be perfect. It's just Dr. Will.
I know.
But again, you're talking now about RV parks, where people come in and live, properly live in their RVs. We were talking about getting rid of the empty ones, the not in use RVs.
Yeah, and that's what the current code says pretty much. You can only live, the code before we adopt it in a week, says the only way you can live in an RV is if it's an RV park.
Yeah,
The new code is going to say you can live in it for a short period of time, for a couple of weeks, with an easy permit, or you can come to this group and get a 6-month permit. Either way, you can't live in it permanently.
we still need an RV park. I know it was sad after the Circle K opened. For many months, you could drive by there anytime and there'd be a big RV pulled over and you could just see the people saying, where'd the park go? You know, but now there's a service that's got a gas station there. But yeah, I think those are two separate issues. We need both,
Yeah,
yeah.
you just said something that kind of, I was thinking, so if I have a, hypothetically, I have a vacant lot, I own it, there's no house on there, and I go request a 180-day permit because I'm a winter visitor, and I'm gonna be here for 180 days.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you have to be at your residence.
See, there's always those people looking for those loopholes.
That's what I said, and that's the lens that I look at it through, because you know what, I was born at night, but not last night, so. So that's the lens you have to look at it through, because those people will do that, that's
People
just
always
human
looking to
nature,
get
and there's nothing
around.
wrong with that, you know? It's like
The intent of that is pretty much, say you have, you know, you have a RV parking back to your house and you have a wedding and your family all comes in and you want to be able to live in it for a couple of weeks, you can get a permit for that.
Yeah,
You're getting your house fumigated, you can live in your RV for a
Yeah.
short period of time.
yeah.
Now, it's just a little bit of flexibility. It's not a permanent solution.
So what was our goal today, folks?
Well, I appreciate the discussion today. I wasn't convinced that we have the right ordinance, but after today's discussion, I think we do. I think when we pass that ordinance and it goes to the council and they pass it, I think we got the right one. It's the best we can do. And Todd, thank you for your patience.
Always.
Well, you know, and I agree with that, but I think we're gonna wind up revisiting this probably sooner than we think.
I think that if the code enforcement officer finds some issues that there's some gray area, I fully expect that you guys will be back and talk to us about it.
Absolutely. The best way to figure out if your code's working is to go out and try to enforce it. We will come into people we're victimizing and people we are helping, and the code is never, it's never good to everyone. There's always somebody who has a hard case that is going to be, that you're going to feel bad enforcing the code on. And that's why we try to put the flexibility in there. So if when we reach those, we can do it. But there's going to be some solutions we're not going to be able to have.
Would it make sense, group, for this, or the committee here, or the zoning committee, that once it goes into effect, or whatever time frame that is, from the day it goes into effect, let's revisit it in 6 months and have the code enforcer come back? Because if we wait a year, that might be too long. But we need to catch those things early. So I think maybe if it's a robust enforcement, he's gonna come and tell us, hey, look, this is what's going on out there. Maybe in 6 months we come back and we take a look at, hey, how are we doing on this new code that we put into effect? If the council passes it. What do you think?
I'm in.
Well, like everything else, you see down time, if you need to tweak it, we've done this on all the zoning codes before, so.
I do think that it's probably going to take a revisit, and I will put that on the agenda to in about 6 months to come back and revisit. I think that we're going to hear about it a lot sooner than that.
Well, we'll come back sooner too then.
I'm sure there's going to be at least one citizen out there who is connected and angry enough to come here and yell. And that's going to be, that will be a test of
The
it.
couple that was here last month, they bought another piece of property, and they saw that they could put their RV there. Well, they don't live in that house, and that was an issue, but it's, you know, what I could tell was it wasn't visible from the street hardly at all, although it didn't comply with the.
It did? It did comply?
It did not.
Oh, it did not? Oh.
Yeah. So I think technically they would be in violation once it gets passed,
Because there's nobody living in it.
because there's nobody living in that house.
Well, right now, they're technically in violation, period. So, I mean, they were already in violation. I think the assumption that we're going to hit all these hard cases all at once is probably impractical. It takes a while to have contact with all these people. I used to do sweeps of town. It would take me 6 months and go from one end of town to the other. In that period, I probably write 300 or 400 notices to people and follow up with each of those people. So it's nothing that happens overnight. And even if he just focuses on RVs, if he can't see it from the street, he's not gonna cite it, he won't know it's there. So, code enforcement you enforce the code, the violation you see. You don't enforce a blanket across the whole town. It just doesn't work that way.
I like that. You enforce the violation you see, not the violation you can't see.
So it's here no evil, see
See no evil.
Right?
I kind of like that language.
There's also some basis for that, because generally the Supreme Court has said that you have a right to privacy on your personal property. And if it's your residence, we don't have a right of entry. On a business, we can write a search warrant and go in. You can't do that on a personal property. All we can do is stand at the street and look into your property, and if we see a violation, we can cite it. If I can't see it from the property line, I can't cite it. This is the way it works.
What about corner houses?
Well, then I can see a lot, and they can't get away with much, can they?
No, but it's on their property, they live
If
on
I
the
can't see it, then I'm
property.
not snitching.
Well,
It's parked behind their house.
whichever if a house faces the street in one direction, that's the frontage
Okay.
on corner lots. So they just have to be past that frontage. All right, we talked about a lot. As far as I can tell, forgive me for saying it, I couldn't find any better solutions to start with. And I'm not surprised that we haven't really hit on one tonight. It's a complex issue, and you've got to balance it, you've got to weigh it. And that's what justice does, right? It's a scale. It's never clear cut one way or the other. It's always a balance.
Yeah, Todd, the other meeting I was at, I brought it to attention that we should throw an article in the paper and say that planning and zoning was working on the issue, and that if you had an RV, say, on your property, bring it to the city's attention or what have you, because you know what, in Superior, man, the first thing that comes out, well, nobody told me, I didn't hear it, and then they start throwing bullets from the spectators' chairs at us.
This will be full.
Yeah, they will.
This will be
It
full.
will be
What I
full
would
of
s-
people throwing daggers at us.
What I would say is, I enact policy that this committee and that the council puts together. I never speak for my council. They are the elected officials, it's their voice that matters. So if I can put out informational stuff, but I will not have any opinion. So if you would like me to do an informational brochure, I can do that. If you would like to put out an opinion, then I encourage you to do that as well. That may be something that this group does as a committee.
You mean an opinion from this body here?
Yeah. You cannot legally act, but you're here for your advice and consent, right? You don't get to legally act on actions, but you recommend actions to the council. And again, I have no standing in that conversation other than just representing the town at the table. You are the people who make decisions, I do not.
Well, would that would that recommendation come when it goes before the council?
Yes, and the council, the mayor generally writes articles in the paper.
And that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so,
And information.
I will mention that you suggest that she address it in one of her, I don't know if you've seen her updates.
Yes.
She tries to cover everything that would, so much is happening right now, it's hard to cover everything. But
This is an important issue though, you know, when it comes to us eventually.
I will pass on to the mayor,
Sure.
requesting an informational release.
Okay. Any more
Yes,
comments from the public, please?
yes. I, again, live in the Highlands, and I would love some information. I've been directed 50 million different directions, and I'm hoping you guys can help me. Tell me who I talk to. First of all, we have a ditch at the end of our street, at the top of Picket Post. Nobody seems to know whose ditch it is, whose easement it is, but it's full of trash. Absolutely top of the line trash. There's soda cans, there's trees, and somebody just recently dumped a cactus over there. And my husband and I have been trimming around the post office boxes up there because nobody wants to take any responsibility for the weeds that are growing up there. So we took it upon ourselves to start cutting those things. But that ditch is way beyond what we can do.
Is that a
So-
drainage ditch?
So if you can give me, if you can do me a favor and stop at the front desk when they're open and put in a work order, then Public Works will go clean the drainage out. We keep drainages open because they are drainage easements.
That's my concern, because and I noticed that it's really bug infested. And we're getting snakes that are coming from that, and I am very concerned about this year. My next question is, who is responsible for trimming the forest land around the houses? Because Ducey says that 2005 is supposed to be our worst fire year. All it's gonna take is one cigarette and we're gonna be like Paradise, California out there. And the Forest Service tells me, oh, they're gonna come out and do it. Does anybody know anybody in the Forest Service that we can call to ask them to come out and tell us, hey, we can't do it, we're gonna do it, we're not gonna do it? Because this is gonna be a bad fire season in our backyard.
I can answer that. They've done the Highlands several times. The problem is it's usually a hotshot crew, and they do it in the slack time. And if
Okay.
they're busy, then you don't get the slack time and they don't do it. So,
I totally understand that.
and so it's a and I have some contacts, I'll make a call and see if we can get somebody out to do it.
That would be fantastic, because we've got a lot of elderly people that are moving into the area too that cannot do it. Not only can they not do it, they can't even afford to do it because the prices are just kind of outrageous. After somebody just paid $1,500 to have their tree trimmed, you can't have more than one tree trimmed.
I would, just as something to reassure you a little bit, if you look at that area out past the Highlands, it's very broken fuels.
Sure.
So there's areas, big gaps in between things, so it slows brush fires down. We've had a lot of fires out on the Arnett area.
Okay.
But nothing's ever burning that direction. It learns east and west. Doesn't mean that you don't need an area of fire protection around your house, and I will talk to them. I'm not trying to tell you in any way.
No,
that you should.
I totally
I just-
understand.
I'm saying that your fire risk out there isn't as great as you might assume, just looking at the foliage against the back of the houses. It's a little denser back there because people are irrigating their backyards, there's water back there.
Right.
It's growing up pretty heavy. But out past, it's very broken fuels.
Okay, and then my last question is there any way to get some signs out in our area that tell people to stop littering out there?
We are actually doing that in several areas in town. We have an order out for no littering signs.
I talked to Mila before she was headed to a meeting one day, and she said she would bring it up. And because, I wouldn't go to Mesa, I wouldn't go to Globe and throw out the trash, but you would not believe the bags of trash. And-
We do.
Well, and I go out, at least when I'm feeling good, to pick up the trash and put it in my dumpster, but I can't always feel good, and it's just craziness out there.
And I know that Natural Restorations goes out there. I've been participating in 2 of their cleanups out there. They're 2 40-yard roll-offs. They fill up with garbage each time they do it.
Okay,
The hope was that the transfer station would have alleviated some of that, but it's not. And this is a side issue, I'll stop soon. The problem is that that's not in town limits. We have no ability to write tickets on it.
okay.
So what we would like to do, and we can't put signs outside of, anything past that cattle guard's outside town limits, we can't even put signs out there. But we can put one at the cattle guard,
Okay.
which I think is, and then I know Mila mentioned to Anthony to purchase signs, and maybe that's what they're for. I didn't pay that much attention.
There was a sign up there, but they're real small from the Forest Service. You can't even read them.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is we don't have any enforcement ability. One of the things that we are looking at doing in our annexation is annexing that entire area, so our officers can go out to the garbage pile, sort through it, see if there's a bill or something in there, go cite something.
That would be lovely.
Because
Thank
right
you.
now, there's one code enforcement officer for the entire township.
Yes,
which
I
is,
talked to
I
him.
think the size of Rhode Island, I think. There's no way they're gonna catch me.
No,
There
Thank
also
you
should
very
be
much.
on those littering signs, the threat of fines,
yes.
which is the only thing people pay attention to. I know behind, like, catty corner from the back of Ken's house, somebody dumped a whole pickup truck cab.
I don't
Somebody was living in it for a while at least.
I don't understand people. I could see
Yeah, but they will go all that way and just dump construction stuff and whatever, when they're bar disposals. But unless people think they're going to get fined, arrested, they don't care, it's easier to just dump.
Just on a
Thank
side
you.
note, for if you know anybody who has garbage you think is gonna take to the desert, we have a free dump day this weekend.
Yep,
And it's, there'll be 10 40-yard roll-offs out there. Sometimes they fill up in 2 hours, sometimes they don't fill up for a week.
we have a trailer load with everybody's garbage in the area already, ready to go.
We take in line early.
Thank you for that.
There's gonna be really limited help out there because, I don't know if everyone's familiar, Fire Chief Angel Gomez died this week, and his funeral is this weekend. And I know I'm gonna be there, and many of the townspeople are gonna be there, so they're gonna be lightly staffed out there.
What time does it start, Saturday, 7?
7 a.m., yes, 7 to noon. And the time before last, it was full at 9 o'clock. And the time after that, they had only fill up 4 dumpsters and they had to take all the rest back.
Do they take electronics and light bulbs and stuff like that?
There is an electronics dumpster out there now. So, but the electronics do not include CRTs anymore. CRTs are just thrown in the regular dumpster, nobody's recycling.
What's restricted right now as far as going, it's taking over, like, tires and everything?
We'll take tires, you can only take 5. We can't have hazmat materials, but construction materials will take limited quantities.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's just, the real thing you have to tell everybody is it's available till they're full.
Thank
Full,
you.
we shut the gates.
That's good. How often do you do that? Once a quarter or something?
Twice a year.
Twice a year?
We pay for half the dumpsters and Republic pays for half of them.
Good.
So it costs us about $3,000 each time we do it, so we've got to be cautious.
You know, you were talking about the dumping in the Forest Service. I was born and raised here, gone, came back, but you know what? I'm thinking, why is it worse now than it's ever been? Because it wasn't like that when we were growing up. I think proximity to the valley, the people are global, man. I think there's rascals from Kearney and Gator coming over here dumping the garbage in the desert.
We have drug users that are using up on the top of the circle as their drug haven up there. And you can always tell when they come in, because it's a car you've never seen. They do a circle about 3 times just to make sure there's no cops around, and then they go sit up there. And it's really sad. It really is sad.
I feel sad for the poor kids in town, because you know that up on Apache Leaf Road, that's a makeout spot. And when you go to a makeout spot, there's a pile of crap in the middle of it. You can't even pull in there. Okay.
Okay, any other call to public?
Pam?
Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So move.
Motion made by Hank to adjourn the meeting, do I hear a second?
I second.
Seconded by David Gunn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries to adjourn the work session of Planning and Zoning Commission.